we've got a few of us here who'll be speaking. So, Peter, introduce yourself.
Right there.
Yeah, all we've got is the camera there. So.
Okay, right. So I've got some people online as well. So hello, people online, as well as hello, people in the room. I'm Peter Konoski. I'm an ANU graduate. I studied my honours degree here in forestry from 1979 to 81. And I was a Rhodes Scholar in 1983. Been back at ANU as an academic since 1995, after beginning my academic career at Oxford, which is a place that I love and really encourage you to be interested in going to. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm also the National Secretary for the Rhodes Scholarship, so I work with Kate and her equivalents in each of the states and territories who administer the scholarships in each of those jurisdictions. Kate and her colleague Anna administer those for the process for the Commonwealth territories, the ACT and the Northern Territory, and then candidates from there and each of the states come to the Australia at Large round, which I'm responsible for managing. So great to meet you all. Look forward to talking with you.
Ollie, welcome to stand in front of the camera here.
Sure. Hi everyone, just quickly, I'm Ollie. I just got back from Oxford a few months ago. I did my 2 years there from 2020 to 2022. I'm originally from Tassie, so a Tassie scholar, now living and working in Canberra for the Department of Climate Change, and here today to kind of answer any questions from a more contemporary Oxford experience and what it's like and why you should apply. And it's great to see so many people here and online.
All right, so I'm going to run through a little bit of background information and logistics. We can happily send this slideshow out to all of you as well. So if you email, we're happy to kind of send you a PDF of this slideshow. So you don't have to worry about kind of taking copious notes. Also, the ANU Scholarships webpage has all of these details, and it's a really, really good detailed coverage of particularly the Rhodes, but all the other scholarships as well. So the Rhodes Scholarship, I assume you all have heard of it. That's why you're here, rather than just wandering into a random room for the law school on a Tuesday evening. It is a 100-plus-year-old scholarship sending students postgraduate, so after their first degree, to the University of Oxford. The scholars are sent from around the world, largely originally from British colonies and friendly nations, and now much more. So the Rhodes Scholarship sends a number of scholars from around the world, and the scholar community grows every year. And there is this kind of extensive alumni network that some people are more involved with than others. It depends on I'm an archaeologist. There are a few of us archaeologists kicking around, but not a ton in the Rhodes Scholar community. In terms of Australia, we send 9, so 1 from each of the states and 3 Australia at large. So you notice ACT, Northern Territory are not in that list. That's because it goes through a double interview process. So we promote 1 or 2 people from the territories into the at-large round, at which 3 scholarships are awarded. The at-large round also includes candidates from the other states as well. So it is a slightly different process state to state. These are your kind of general criteria for the Australian version. And for the record, I think if you have questions specifically about criteria and eligibility and the experience thereof, point them at these 2 rather than at me, because I clearly came through the American round, which just operates kind of ever so slightly differently. But essentially, we're aiming at people who are mostly under 25, with a few exceptions for people whose degrees go a bit longer or who start university a bit late. You would get that exemption from Peter if you think, well, I'm 26, but I think I should still be eligible to apply. You email and he would respond with the response there. You have an undergraduate or an honors or a master's degree or some equivalent. You've spent at least 2 years in Australia in secondary school. You're a citizen or a permanent resident. These are all the kind of basic criteria. You can reapply if you're not successful the first time, if you meet the criteria still in your second year. So you can apply a second time. And in fact, many people do and are successful in their second run through. What those criteria are that people are judged against are pretty big things. So we look at academic achievement, specifics with a very high level of academic achievement. That's partly because it is a very exclusive scholarship. That's also partly because we expect you to have the grades to get into your chosen degree program at Oxford. And that, Oxford is increasingly selective, as are many of the world's top universities. Usually we say that's about a WAM of 80. What's that in the grade point average in ANU? I always forget this one. It's
3.75.
Yeah.
4 point scale.
Yeah, but that ANU is a 6-point scale, doesn't it? I always get lost with the ANU scale because it's not native to me here.
You should be in HD territory most of the time.
Yep.
Occasional D or something else might rule you out.
Yep.
But should be in the HD territory.
You mostly want your degree to look like a first all the way through. On top of that, there are comments around energy and purpose. So energy and purpose, often this is kind of flagged as, oh, you must be an athlete. Well, like in 1955. But not now. Now we think that energy and that purpose can be directed much more broadly, and particularly around kind of international focus and an international understanding. Because a big part of the Rhodes ideal is bringing people together from around the world to become future leaders, to develop themselves as best as possible, and to bring that into the world to make the world a better place. Hence, other things that we ask people to demonstrate: integrity, courage, responsibility, concern for others, generally kind of a very high level of awareness of yourself in society and the way that you contribute to your community, whether your community is very local to you or is broader, or even your international community. And a lot of that plays out through our kind of final criteria, which is leadership. And we're looking for people with kind of good leadership character, instincts to lead, who'll take this opportunity and run with it and do great things with it. And all of those are things that Rhodes Scholars very much demonstrate. In terms of what it provides, here are all the details. It comes out to quite a lot. Essentially, it's 3 years fully funded if you need that much time. Some people do 2-year degrees, some people stay longer. But 3 years fully funded at Oxford with a personal stipend, access to private health insurance, and they'll fly you there and fly you back to the beginning and the end of the scholarship. There are a whole series of very exciting things that they'll put on for you as well in Oxford. The Rhodes community is at the moment very strong and very lively. It's quite dynamic. I'm sure Ollie and Bridget will have things to say about this, because it seems even more exciting now than when I was there. I'm quite jealous of the things you guys coming back tell me that you were up to. But there are workshops, internships, speaker sessions, cultural exchanges, trips, all sorts of stuff, right? And I'm sure if they have questions about that, Ollie, you can expound at length about all the fun things that the Rhodes Trust and Rhodes House let you experience and help you experience. Yeah. In terms of the applications, apply through the Rhodes House website. Applications close at midnight on the 8th of September. And these are your kind of basic requirements. You'll have to give us your academic record, a statement of study, so that's your plans for study at Oxford, a personal statement, which is pretty structured, a full CV, and 5 referees, 3 of them academic. That's a lot of referees, but I have full faith that all of you have 5 people in your corner who are very happy to kind of recommend you for exciting things. But the non-academic referees, they can be things like employers, people who've worked with you in volunteering contexts, coaches if you're an athlete, these sorts of people who know you really well, who've seen you in different contexts, and who can speak to your greatness and your potential and your leadership. Yeah. And with our kind of calendar process, so the applications are open through the 8th of September. The shortlisting for the territories will happen in early October, and we'll be having our interviews locally in the first week of November, so the 1st and 2nd of November. There are 2 dates because the interview process is, has a social event as well. There's a dinner the night before and then interviews the following day with a panel of people who are kind of notable Canberrans. Some are Rhodes Scholars, some are not, all different ages, different backgrounds. The idea is to develop a diverse and very interested interview panel. And then those of you promoted to the at-large round a couple of weeks later, we'll go through. And Peter, I think I have those dates, right? Yeah, the 21st and 22nd?
Yeah, if the Governor General agrees.
Yeah, there we go. If the Governor General agrees, the at-large round will be the 21st and 22nd, and those interviews will determine which of the territory scholars hopefully gets up for a scholarship. Those are the dates. Because we have to coordinate with the Governor General, amongst other people. And their calendars are often way more rigid than ours. We have done, is there scope for online interviews, or is that off the table these days?
Not really.
Yeah.
Shall I stand up here and
Yeah.
speak about that?
Yeah.
So just a couple of points. Sonali, who's online, pointed out in 6.75 on a 7-point scale is the sort of threshold GPA. But just to reiterate that it's not a criterion. The committee will look at your academic achievement and will want to see that you're outstanding academically. So there's a number of ways to demonstrate that. The easiest starting point is to have a high GPA, but there might be mitigating circumstances. And if there are, that one semester you had a tough time and things didn't go so well and that dropped your average, that's okay. Just explain that in your application. Other evidence of outstanding academic achievement, you might have won some prizes or awards, or there might be some other ways that you can demonstrate that. Committee's trying to get a sense of who you are in your academic achievement, as well as against the other criteria that Kate mentioned. So if your GPA is less than 6.75, it doesn't rule you out, but you need to be thinking about how you would explain in your application how you're an outstanding, how your academic achievements are outstanding. Also have to be conscious that getting into Oxford is tough going these days, and that even just having a high GPA won't necessarily get you into Oxford. So it's a two-stage process, which Kate is probably coming to. If you were successful and being elected a Rhodes Scholar, you've then got to apply for Oxford separately, subsequently, with support from Rhodes House. And even Rhodes Scholars don't get their first choice course always. So in this year's pool of 9 Australian scholars, I think 8 out of the 9 got their first choice. Last year, though, it was only about half got their first choice, of course. The admission to the masters, particularly the one-year masters in Oxford, is really competitive, and
although that does vary by degree.
It does.
So if you're going into the BCL, the Bachelor of Common Law, that's very competitive. If you're looking, for example, for an archaeology master's, there are fewer international applicants for those, and they are perhaps slightly more accessible.
That's true. Let me not forget to plug the archaeology degree to help Kate say something.
One day Australia.
We might come back to that issue about admission and so forth, talking to Ollie, but also Bridget. I think I can get her sound on my laptop, which might be a way of involving her in the conversation as well.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, actually, that was what I was going to say. Was after the interviews, what happens next? So you've just gazumped me. It's fine. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the interviews, the appointment is all very exciting. At which point you then have to apply and go through the process, which can be slightly convoluted. But Peter, the Rhodes community, Rhodes House, once one has been appointed scholar, are here to kind of support and help that process along. These are kind of our contact information as well. If you have more questions, I left Anna off. Sorry, Anna. Sorry, Anna. I left my co-secretary off the slide. But you can email the Rhodes Scholarships email at ANU. That basically comes to me. Or you can email Peter for more kind of top-level national things. I think that was pretty much all I wanted to get across in the presentation. So first, any quick questions about that, and then probably turn over to Ollie and Bridget for scholar experience questions. So any kind of arrangements, dates, scheduling, yeah.
Can we go back to the criteria?
I can do this.
There was something else I wanted to say about the criteria as well. You don't, not much negotiation about that. Yeah. Okay, if that was a question. That's okay, but it's an important question because there are 2 other categories of scholarship that you might be eligible for if you're not eligible for an Australian scholarship. And so important to mention those. They're in the information for candidates and on the Rhodes House website. The first of those is what's called interjurisdictional. So that might be an example where an Australian citizen, you've been to university here, but you were somewhere else for high school. And that somewhere else was a country that accepts, is part of the Rhodes Scholarship portfolio, if you like. In a case like that, you could apply for what's called interjurisdictional consideration. That is, you've been sort of half meet the criteria in 2 different Rhodes constituencies. You don't fully meet them in any one. And that process is pretty straightforward, but it does require making an application to Rhodes House, who then look at it and say, yes, we agree that you meet those criteria. And then you apply in the one with which the constituency with which you have the greatest sort of association. So, for example, in that hypothetical case, if you're an Australian, you're at university here, but you went to high school somewhere else, probably you'd apply in Australia, unless you had some strong reason to apply in the other place. The second scholarship that might be relevant for some of you is a global scholarship. So that's if you don't meet the criteria to apply in any scholarship in any country for which there are Rhodes scholarships associated with that country. Indonesia is a neighbourly example, or Pacific Islands. Then you can apply for a global scholarship. There are only 2 of those for the rest of the world besides the Rhodes countries, so they're pretty competitive. But the first Indonesian scholar was elected 2 years ago. The global scholarships close earlier than the Australian ones. They close on the 1st of August. So if you happen to be somebody who might be eligible for global, you need to get that process underway pretty quickly. It also needs some supporting documentation from the university that you have attended, which in anybody's case here would be ANU. And so you need to sort of be on the front foot about that. But in general, if you only apply for interjurisdictional, through interjurisdictional or through global, if you're not eligible for Australia, or if you're, for example, you're a New Zealand citizen and you've met the New Zealand criteria, but you're still studying at ANU, you might apply through New Zealand. You have to make a choice. You can only apply in one place. And as Kate mentioned, a proportion of scholars elected each year are ones who are applying for a second time. Whichever place you apply for first, you can't change your mind and apply somewhere else subsequently. You've got to stick with the place you applied first. So that's a fine print sort of stuff. Does that answer your question? Happy to talk about any specifics later. Any other questions about those sorts of eligibility things while we're talking about them? How about people online?
I don't think so. Still the same too.
Let me just.
That you have looked at.
Holly, is something you'd like to say about your experience of applying and how you chose your course and all that sort of exciting stuff, and why doing that is leading you to go to Bond tomorrow morning?
Sure, happy to, and then quickly and then go to questions. So I got given a bit of advice that I actually think, having done the process, is really true, and it's how beneficial the writing the personal statement is at this stage of your career, whether you're just finishing uni or have finished recently. So I think I would really recommend applying to have that experience of writing. I'm not sure how long it is now, 1,500, 2,000 words about
750.
750.
Yeah.
About exactly who you are, what you want to achieve, what you're passionate about, all of that. So we'd really promote that. In terms of choosing a course, again, not sure of the exact process for ANU and here, but I actually interviewed for a course and then changed my mind afterwards, because Rhodes is really supportive with kind of what courses are doing and getting you in contact with people who have done them. So whilst you have a kind of course to apply with for the application, it is a little bit more open to think about. So I kind of was made aware of a course I didn't really know about beforehand.
What course did you do?
So I did a master's in environmental change and management. It's one of those courses that Peter mentioned earlier where there's a 1-year MSc, but kind of having the fortunate support of Rhodes for 2 years. I did the 2-year MPhil, it's called Master of Philosophy. First year coursework, really fantastic experience in our course, kind of breadth over depth. And then second year's research, which is quite common for those kind of courses. Or many people in my year, I think it's really common now, will do a DPhil, a PhD, or do 2 1-year courses. So lots of people might do a Master of Public Policy and then something else afterwards or before. So that was kind of my experience. Being in UK in proximity to Europe, it's an amazing kind of time to be studying and learning, and with all the support of Rhodes, you kind of get to do lots of things in Oxford and around Oxford, but of course more broad. So some of the activities, a few of my friends recently with a Rhodes cohort went to Patagonia on a trip. So there's all these amazing things happening. So much more than just a kind of 2 years in your room studying opportunities, kind of a wide variety of leadership kind of experiences. So that's kind of it in a really quick nutshell. Sport's a big part of Oxford for me. For some people it wasn't. They did things like Oxford Union. So kind of anything you can imagine, there will be a society or a club for it. So kind of that was the best thing about it. No matter how niche or quirky your interest was, you'll find people there that love that. So I kind of really enjoyed that about it. Oxford, like I think the ambition is kind of, it's been intoxicating. So whatever you're passionate for, you'll find like-minded people and be able to really pursue it and chase it. So that's what I loved most about it. But yeah, happy to take questions further and Bridget online as well to chat a bit more.
Swing over to Bridget and then get some questions. Is that okay?
Bridget, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Peter. Sorry, just a bit slow on the unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to say something about your experience and anything you'd like to put on the table at this early stage?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me virtually. And I'm sorry I can't be with you all in the room. I'm traveling overseas at the moment. But really nice to see those online as well. So I was a Rhodes Scholar in 2018, so a few years ago now. Ollie's experience is probably a little bit more recent, but I would certainly echo a lot of what he had to say. When I was there, also did a 2-year MPhil course. I studied a MPhil in Modern Middle Eastern Studies, which meant a lot of Arabic language, and some kind of politics and history courses, and really loved that degree. In terms of the application process, I do definitely concur with what Ollie said about the process of writing the personal statement. The other thing I just wanted to say is to not feel intimidated about the number of referees that are required or references. When I first saw the requirements for the Rhodes Scholarship and the number of referees, I balked a bit, and I found that quite a daunting prospect. I sort of thought, I was one of those candidates who kind of pulled myself together in my final years, but my start to university was a bit rocky. And so I was a bit worried, I suppose, asking professors for references. But I would just say, please, people will be more than happy to support you, and if not, they can decline. So please don't feel shy about asking. It's very normal. 3 is a lot, but I think, yeah, just have no qualms about it. Please, don't let that be a barrier for you in terms of applying. From my experience, everyone was extremely willing to help and really validated my decision to apply, which was really, really good and gave me a lot of confidence. I think this was mentioned briefly, the social element of the interview as well. I think that's a kind of quite a unique feature of the Rhodes application process. And again, I'd say don't let it put you off. It's a really enjoyable evening that you spend with the selection committee and the other scholars. I met one of my now best friends at that dinner. And it's actually a really nice environment in which to showcase kind of who you are, your interests, and to kind of demonstrate your values and kind of who you are as a person. So I would definitely embrace that opportunity, and don't kind of think that it is a bit unusual, but it's a really worthwhile part of the process. So don't feel too put off by it. I had a fantastic couple of years at Oxford. I also did a fair bit of sports. I did rowing and AFL and swimming and triathlon when I was at Oxford. one of my favourite things was just exploring the areas around Oxford. Heading into London, that proximity was really exciting. The people I met were extraordinary from all over the world, and still some of my closest friends now, even though I'm back in Canberra. The other thing I should just add as well is I was, when I was applying, also just was slightly unsure about which constituency to apply for. So I was born in Melbourne, finished my high schooling in Adelaide, and then moved back to Melbourne for university. And so I was a bit torn about whether to apply in Victoria or South Australia. I ended up applying in Victoria, and went through the Victorian rounds and wasn't successful, and then went into the Australia at large round. So just to explain that kind of either way you go, it's all much for muchness. So I wouldn't fret too much if you're in the position of making a decision about which constituency to apply in as well. I hope some of that is useful. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has.